we're trying to just slap AI into it somewhere to make it better, but it just makes it faster and still unclear.
If you treat it as your partner, you're going to fail because AI is not trained to feel. You're dead pretty much if you rely on SEO. The single most productive area of AI is really the CRM, which is kind of the heart of a database that you use for marketing purposes.
Welcome to the Venue RX. On this show, we document and share best practices around owning, operating, and managing world-class wedding venues.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Venue RX. On this show, we are all about making a difference for the better in your business. I'm Jonathan, I'm your host, and we do a couple of different types of shows here on the Venue RX. We talk to venue owners all about what it is like to operate and own wedding venues. We also talk to wedding pros and professionals in other industries, marketing, operations, everything. We cover really the full gamut of what it takes to run a successful business here in this industry. Today, we have a very special guest with us today, and he's someone who has done a lot of thinking and work with folks, especially as we've come into more of an AI-driven generation and AI age. And it's something that we've been spending some time talking about here on the show. And I'm excited for this discussion here today because I think something that all of us struggle with is understanding where to implement AI in our workflows and in our systems. And there's a lot of talk about the downsides and the upsides and maybe even a little bit of FOMO around if we're not using it. And so I am excited to talk about that today. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Gal Borenstein to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this is going to be interesting. First, you've written several books and more, recently you have a couple books. In fact, you have Beating Goliath with AI as a recent book you've put out. I'm curious. I love a good origin story. If folks are listening, then they've listened to a couple of shows before. I love a good origin story. What made you interested in marketing first? How did you get into marketing, and what piqued your interest about AI and how that's having an impact in this field?
Well, my path has been maybe unusual or not unusual, depending on people in the communication industry. I was really destined to be a journalist, which means you see things through the eyes of telling a story about things that are happening, but you're supposed to be objective. And after going to school at Temple University in Philadelphia and George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, I kind of fell in love with the advertising side of things and marketing, because I had a chance to really kind of develop creative narratives that would basically create a whole legacy of ideas. And these ideas essentially create opportunities to take it to multiple media, if you will. And the bottom line is a journalist is bound by certain ethics about how many sources you have. And suddenly I find myself, instead of being an observer, I became a doer. And that's really kind of what inspired me to start the Bourstein group and really kind of looking at how it started. It started with the idea that small companies need marketing agencies, and small companies need a lot more help because they can't afford big agency fees just to figure out what the go-to-market strategy, what the messaging is, PR, marketing, and now AI-enabled marketing. So really the bottom line is I'm here today because I took what I learned over the past 20 plus years of being in the industry and start thinking about almost letters to folks that I've worked with and folks that are interested in improvement. And it really kind of came back to that I needed to write a letter. And the letter became a book, and the book became 5 books. And the latest 2 books are one really dealing with the trust issues, the erosion of trust in everything that we're doing in terms of communications. And the second is Beating Goliath with AI, which has to do with we're the Davids and we need to use AI as digital slingshot versus looking at it and getting overwhelmed or doing things so fast that you don't have time to think about it.
Yeah. I want to take the conversation today in a couple of different directions related to that. I first want to talk about, that maybe erosion of trust, or that, I think the impact maybe, because with marketing, we've all known, whether it's on TV or it's in print, that maybe there's a little bit of hyperbole, there's a little bit of exaggeration, there's a little bit of, there's some extra sauce on the marketing side, right? To really showcase what is being offered, whether that's a wedding venue or a different product or a service or whatever. And so I think there's always been a little bit of realism in the eyes of the consumer. They're thinking, wow, that looks so cool. And then there's a little thought in the back of their head that, what does it do? What does it actually do? Is it going to break? Some of these different things. And of course, good marketing is, talking about both sides of those. Now with AI, it's undoubted. I mean, we're seeing an imagery that we see with our eyes, and these generation models with both video and picture are getting hyper realistic. And so I think that trust has been eroded even faster. Is this something that you're seeing in marketing, and what's the impact? Like, okay, there's trust that's being eroded, but then what's happening after that?
Well, I think to kind of set the scene for what you just described, trust has always been kind of the core of what we try to market and communicate, whether it was inside a company, between managers, executive management and employees, staff, HR. Think about any job that you ever had. It was based on the idea that you're staying at your job because you trust enough that your manager is supporting you, that your CEO has cultural values that you believe in, or the company's just cool and has a spirit of entrepreneurship, especially if you're on the startup side. But when COVID happened, we went from being next to each other and having the opportunity to have lunch together, to play ping pong together, to make presentations in a room full of people. And it was a psychology of communications that was based on the idea that there's an eye-level conversation. And when COVID came, everything just went away. All the things that we used to think about signals of trust have disappeared, because the only thing you could do was to get on a Zoom call or a Microsoft meeting call, doesn't matter, and only talk about the issues at hand that you have, because you had 20 people in little screens looking at it. And the result of that was suddenly people had to become almost like broadcasters or CNN reporters that are media trained. And the reality is none of us are media trained when it comes to any issue. Okay. You have to prepare. You have to have kind of an understanding of how the camera works, and everyone is different. And what we've done to kind of people in society is force them into a new media that is not really kind of based on what you're saying, but how it's being perceived, without really having tools to mitigate it. So the best next thing was you can follow up with an email, but the bottom line is you wouldn't trust things as easily as you've done before. And that's really where the erosion became worse, because in the age where digital and AI came about, AI brought the promise of productivity. I brought the promise of being able to make things go faster, increase the productivity, and claiming a lot of claims about results and outcomes that are associated with growth. So what happened with AI basically was already kind of created many, many years ago. In fact, if you think about Siri and Alexa on your phone, that was the beginning of what we kind of see as a popular AI. But the reality is that what the promises that AI is making is based on machines that are coming up with logic to make things more productive. They don't have the heart. They don't feel anything. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is. They'll give you a justified answer of why they did it. And that's really where the trust is being eroded to a point where messages are going out in advertising and marketing and PR through CRM systems, and they're basically heartless. And people are picking up on it. And that's really the biggest issue that we're facing today, even as everyone is adopting AI because they're afraid the world is going to come to an end if I don't get AI agents on board. And most importantly, I'm going to lose my competitive edge.
Do you think there is an overwhelmingly negative, just in the main, kind of, if you had to generalize, is there more of a negative or more of a positive impression around AI and the effects that it will have?
I think in speaking to many people, both on the kind of executive management level and what we call folks that are just working at their job, and especially in marketing, you find very often that there are really kind of two groups. There are one group that sees itself as kind of the self-selection and the kind of the winning win, that it basically means they'll take AI and implement it everywhere they can and own the knowledge how to do it. And then the other group feels that they're going to be displaced and fired because they don't understand how AI works. And I think that kind of chasm is being accelerated by the fact that once AI is being implemented, you can take and replicate something that you thought was a solution and make it into a problem that replicates itself 1,000,000 times, because that email that you send is going now to 1,000,000 people instead of 10 people. And there's no quality control in between other than make sure that there's no typos maybe in it.
For an industry like the wedding and events industry, where it's an emotional sale, right? And you're not selling a widget as much as you're selling an experience or some component of an experience. What do you feel the impact is on having maybe a fire and forget mentality when it comes to using AI tools, either for marketing copy, emails like you were mentioning? What's the impact of that, number one? And number two, how should we be using it if it's not happening today?
I really would like to transpose the question and ask first, what are we doing with AI that is helping the industry that you mentioned? If you don't have goals set on the front end of the process, any kind of AI solution is going to make it exaggerated to a positive point of view, or ruin that experience that you're talking about. When you talk about your industry, about wedding planning, it's all about creating kind of an experience. And the experience is another word for saying people will feel things, people will be happy, people will have a positive reaction to what AI can do for them. And what's really kind of happening, to answer your first question, is that there are people that are very smart and know that AI is an assistive tool or assistive technology and cannot replace the experience of a human being that is talking to, for example, the bride and the groom, or understands that not everybody likes to be on video at all times. And at the same time, it's really cool to see all the creative AI solutions that are now enabled by using this technology. For example, who would have thought that a wedding could be filmed by a drone that is linked to an AI software that says, take all these angles and make it cooler and produce it live so people can have it on YouTube or on Facebook or for their family that can't show up to the wedding. So these are cool things, but again, there are issues of ethics. There are issues of, are you doing the right thing for the target customer, for the couple, for the family. And these are not points of planning just from a technology point of view. It's all comes back to, are you creating a human-centric system? And I think that's where the failure is. There are good results when it comes to seeing those drones and what they can film, which is amazing. But I think when you take away the people, when you take away the touch that humans are involved in, and you make wedding planners kind of a website where you can just type in data and it just produces free plans for you with no input from a human being, I think that's where the demise of any industry starts.
If you're, if someone's listening to this right now and all the different AI tools are maybe overwhelming to them, they hear about these LLMs, they hear about APIs, they hear about tokens, they hear about these keys. Like, what is all this stuff, right? And then, of course, they hear about the big headliner things, ChatGPT or Claude or any of these terms that they might hear about. Where, for you, has been a helpful place to either start, or where do you direct people to start to educate themselves on what's really going on here without getting overwhelmed and getting lost in some, tech hole that they may not have been prepared to get in?
Absolutely. And the answer is really ChatGPT. ChatGPT has been and is the most friendly kind of getting to know you tool, where it's driven by prompts. And all artificial intelligence is based on prompts, which is another way of saying, give me a formula that I can give you an answer to based on what you're asking. And what I always recommend to people, especially that are kind of new to the idea of incorporating AI, is to really use it for maybe a period of 30 days and ask multiple questions and scenarios that you had in mind and see how ChatGPT answers, because ChatGPT, and of course that includes just generically saying, Perplexity's Claude and Gemini by Google, you have an opportunity to ask, I have a problem. Here are the things that are not resolved. How do I resolve? And you can see how the different engines are actually answering the same question. And while you would think that they would answer it the same way, they don't. They have different personas, if you will, that got created. And the neat thing about it that I'm very excited about when I talk to people, you can actually create a prompt that says, I'm acting as a wedding planner, for example, and I'm looking for a intimate wedding for 30 people. Most people are from Gen X and like this type of music. Can you recommend a plan for it? And what artificial intelligence can do is take books and things that were written online and actually translate it into a pretty coherent plan that you can take and then say, wow, that's really impressive. But now I have to connect it to the customer I just met and do something with it. So play with it for 30 days. Ask impossible questions. Nobody's going to punish you. And it's confidential, which is great. But with that in mind, for cybersecurity reasons, always sign in. Don't really just go on ChatGPT without being signed in to an account, which they give you for free. And if you need more, you can always buy subscriptions. But the whole idea is play with it enough to know what it can't do and what it can do. And from there, create an application to your situation. And that's really how it works.
You mentioned, I love that you mentioned the application to your situation. And because I think that is the most important bridge that maybe people who are either feeling overwhelmed or maybe are very familiar with tools, but they're having a hard time going to the next step. That is the key. And I found even in our organization, as we've implemented different AI processes or systems, we have a problem with ambiguity. We have a problem because we don't have a clearly defined process, and then we're trying to just slap AI into it somewhere to make it better. But it just makes it faster and still unclear.
And I refer to it as emotional IQ. I think that the single most important thing that a business like yours and businesses in your industry need to keep in mind is emotional IQ is the thing that allows you to read the room when new people come into that planning meeting, for example. And if they don't have emotional IQ, they could be very smart on how to build a plan and make sure that everything is organized to 1,000% satisfaction. But if they missed what the wedding is about, what the story is, what is the customer experience that you're trying to do, and to kind of make the narrative that people will remember and the theme that people will be excited about and talk about for the next 20 years and become a referral to another opportunity, that's where the money is at. And when you take that away, you take the human being and you basically say, just make me a plan, which a lot of people are doing right now because they gave up or they think that that's how it works. That's really where the failure is being seen in multiple industries. Because again, AI is here to be an assistive technology to what humans are doing with cognitive psychology, with human relationships, and with customer experience. And if you treat it as your partner, you're going to fail because AI is not trained to feel. And even if it does not have feelings to allow it to correct itself in a way that connects to your values, to your system of beliefs of what makes, for example, a good wedding.
If you're talking to a business owner, maybe, regardless of in our industry or not, and they have that question about application, where do I start? Is there a formula or framework, or are there maybe a couple of questions that you'd ask them or directions that you'd point them in terms of where they should start thinking about applying AI across the entire, there's marketing, there's operations, there's administrative tasks, there's finance, right? Is there places that you find it easier to plug in? And maybe what are those questions and what is that advice that you'd give?
Well, I think that the single most productive area of AI agents, as we call it now, or agentic AI, is really the CRM, which is kind of the heart of a database that you use for marketing purposes. It used to be really difficult to create a list of any kind of sales prospects and keep their information up to date. It involved 3 to 5 people in a marketing department, even in small organizations, to just do direct marketing. And what AI allows you to do is to connect to subscriptions to the databases that you needed to rent before, her list, and make it into an integral database that you can add specific traits. For example, I'm looking for people that are Gen Xers or Gen Zs, or I'm looking for people from cultural preference point of view, and any attribute that you want to add. And AI is perfect for that because you're asking them to take information that exists, and then you're giving them or feeding them the parameters of what it is that you want. And I'm seeing a lot of companies that are growing with lead generation, with sales development, because all the work that used to take weeks and months, and not to mention expense beyond belief, now is being replaced by a system that can suck in the information, or vacuum it, if you will, into the system and create something that's a lot more productive than what you had before. And as I mentioned in my latest book, Beating Goliath with AI, it's all about the fact that if you were a small company and you couldn't do that before because you needed to hire 3 marketing assistants just to have that database validated with the right phone numbers, with the right emails, with the right introductory, maybe a marketing piece that you want. Now you can do it with one person. And in fact, it might be a part-time person that can do the part about setting up the system. And then mass replicated, which is great because you can know within an hour, within a day, who opened it. Did they read it? If it was a video that you sent, did they scrub through the first 20 seconds? Did they actually watch the whole video? All these things are great analytics and tools that AI can help you with. So CRM or sales leads are the areas that AI is pretty good, but it still need your intent, your strategy, your experience, your emotional IQ. So you're not sending letters and soliciting business based on no knowledge of the person on the other side.
Yeah. I want to just clarify something. So I know this is possible, but are you suggesting that businesses should be creating CRM systems with these agents, or are you talking about using ChatGPT to interpret data that their current CRM system may already be giving them?
I think the first step is to play with ChatGPT so you can understand how AI agents think and what are they missing when you get the answers on ChatGPT. But that's really kind of the amateur part of the discovery that you got to have, like you're testing any toy that you would buy, right? So it's still a toy. To make it professional, you got to integrate it with a reliable and scalable, for example, customer relationship management and sales management, like HubSpot or Salesforce. And then you can integrate that information into those systems that already build modules for people in most industries that generate a lot of money through sales leads. So think about the financials, hospitals, insurance, anything that basically has a lot of intense communications. And you can then plug your parameters and build something that is realistic and doable and actually usable for you. But you still have to make that new AI agent into something that works for you, not just a template that works for everyone. If it works for everyone, it means that you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about, in this sense, are you talking about what's kind of commonly referred to as vibe coding?
Yeah, essentially, you nailed it. But at the essence of it for folks that are thinking about it as, I don't understand technology, but I want to see what comes out of it. It really is personalization and making sure that the answers and the questions and the data that you get match your requirements and not just delegating it to the toy or the bot, if you will, that now you kind of educate it a little bit and making sure that it works.
I'm curious about this because I think, you mentioned HubSpot, Salesforce. Why do you think it is that these giants, these industry giants, are losing market share, actually?
Because they're basically fulfilling their unknown wish, which is to grow. But now the robots are taking over and coming up with better ideas on how to be efficient and productive. So even the best companies like Salesforce, like HubSpot, are losing market share because now a smaller business can come and produce what they produce in maybe half of the time or a quarter of the time, which means now that you lost opportunities to create new opportunities for new customers, or new customers don't have to pay the same amount of money to have a subscription or to implement something. So there's a self-devouring type of process. This is part of survival of the fittest in technology. It's always been. Just like Google, for example, when it started, it competed against Yahoo and Excite and Lycos, a bunch of search engines that most people never heard about. And then suddenly Google became 99% of the market and still is. Now, with their addition of generative AI to the searches, it's basically changing the game. So Google, for example, is planning to stay number one by taking advantage of some of the tools they have, adding artificial intelligence, and making sure that they're seeing the future. And I think companies that are slow at adapting will lose the game or lose market share, or will have to buy the smaller companies and the startups that came up with the solution, which is very common as well.
I was listening to a podcast by Neil Patel the other day, and he's a fantastic marketer, and he was talking about this kind of in a similar way. But really, what it comes down to is the personalization of the tech tools that we're using today, and this is something that I'm talking about almost daily with my team and some people in my circle. Is tech has the opportunity now, because of these agents or because of these tools, to be more personal. And so instead of the consumer, us as a business owner, going out and buying a square or buying a triangle or buying a circle based on our use case, we can buy into one thing. Maybe it's Claude, maybe it's OpenAI's ChatGPT, whatever. We can buy into that, and then from there create our own thing that uniquely fits the shape of the whole that we have because of how we serve the market. And I think that is extremely relevant for the hospitality industry specifically, because we all do something different in terms of how we like to serve our clients. So let me ask you maybe a difficult question here, and ask you to tell the future a little bit here. Do you think that these large companies are going to continue losing market share, or are they fundamentally going to change to adapt into this new environment we're in? Like, what happens? These are big established companies.
Well, these companies that we just talked about have been around for over 10 years or 15 years in the industry. And the first entree of HubSpot, for example, which now kind of is a CRM, was really to allow content creation in a more easier environment, if you will, before AI came on board. And Salesforce was essentially the translation of a piece of software that salespeople used to really kind of create direct emails in one database and then track it. So when it responds, it takes you to the next level on the escalation process that leads you to having a conversation and a proposal, and you can track it from one place. My prediction is that smaller companies and startups are right now at that precipice of creating innovative solutions that are industry specific. And out of that cadre of innovators, they will create a lot of small companies, but the small companies will be typically bought by the bigger companies that need a specific skill. So I do not predict that just the way people eulogized IBM for over 35 years. And IBM basically said, okay, we don't do PCs anymore. So now we're at the Watson supercomputer business and data centers. Nobody thought that Google, a search engine, would become, for example, a data center company. Amazon is a data center company as much as it is a logistics and customer experience company. So it's likely to go in that path. And also there'll be a lot of mergers as well, because there's really no place to have 5 or 6 different kind of ChatGPT type organizations. You don't need that. You can have 1 or 2, just the way you have Google and you have Yahoo. You can have the same kind of model, and again, keep acquiring innovative ideas and companies that bring something to the table. And that's what NVIDIA is doing. That's what most of the companies that I kind of track in the industry are doing. They are open to innovation, but they have to balance risk and reward. And the bigger companies are typically publicly traded, which means they have to be really careful before they announce something that doesn't work. Think about Apple, for example, coming up with a new iPhone, and a day later, people say, well, it doesn't work at all. It's not a bug, it's a feature, but it doesn't work at all. And they just paid $1,000 for something. that's going to happen.
Yeah. That's an interesting take on it. It's almost the niching of these models. Like the models, like you get something like Perplexity or even Grok, right? That are very good with research. And then you might use something like OpenAI's ChatGPT for brainstorming. And then you might use Claude for engineer work, setting things up. I mean, Claude is incredibly versatile in terms of how it is positioned. The interesting thing, I'm curious about, we've been talking about Google a little bit here. How do you think Gemini as a tool compares to some of the other models and the tools, specifically given the fact that Google has such a large distribution, probably one of the largest natural distributions today, just because everyone's already using some form of them if you're not already on Microsoft?
I think the folks at Google are really kind of the geniuses, if you will, when it comes to a business model. Google was formed as a search engine that allowed people to also sell advertising through what we call pay-per-click, and then compete for SEO positions of being number 1 and number 90, which means, once you go past page 1 in Google search, you have less than 10% chance that anybody ever going to see you. And here's the genius. They looked at AI and they said, what can AI do in the search engine part of the industry that is a multi-billion-dollar business as well? If you're on an ad that goes on Google and YouTube, for example, you can have it because they own both. But the genius of it is now they're taking the search engine that provides a lot of information, and they're incorporating Gemini, which essentially is a generative AI search, which now allows you to super customize an advertising plan for a potential customer. So think about if you're in the wedding industry or you're a cybersecurity company, it doesn't really matter. But you're looking for a very specific audience to search for specific terms. Now you can sell with more precision and also get your advertising right a lot faster with guarantees that you're capturing the right audience, because the generative AI and machine learning allows you to really kind of create premium. And that's why Google is the premium player when it comes to advertising. And it's only going to expand, as we all basically experienced in the past year, which to me is very frustrating, that Netflix and Paramount and all the other great networks that are streaming all went to the model now that you can't even watch that without an ad. And in fact, you have to pay almost double premium to actually watch something without ads. Well, this is where everything is going. Any part of that combines information with entertainment, or infotainment as they used to call it, is going to bring more advertising revenues and more effective revenues and outcomes for clients, because it allows you to say, hey, I'd like to advertise to people that like, let's say, Frisbee. Where would you find that information before Google and Gemini? The answer would have been nowhere, or you could basically make 1,000 phone calls and make a list that is not curated. Now, by the questions that people are asking, they can create a buyer persona that captures all that stuff. So that's really amazing. And I think that the other Claude and OpenAI have other kind of modules and thoughts about where they want to go with it. And also even in the military and defense technology, it's being used to develop simulations and ideas that before took millions of dollars or billions of dollars. Now it can be done in hours or days or months. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of this frees up time and money. And I'm curious where where that time and money goes, because those are resources, highly coveted resources, again, that used to be driven towards something that, like you said, a simulation or a training program or whatever. Now, if it can happen much quicker, that is freed up resources for an organization. Let me ask you, I know that OpenAI, they announced that they were talking about doing ads inside ChatGPT. But from my understanding, it wasn't really rolled out to mass users. It was more, people with very high ad budgets. They wanted to experiment with it because they're still, hemorrhaging cash. They still are, not really as profitable as they certainly would like to be, just because there's not an engine there. Gemini and Google, they have that ad revenue engine, but have they experimented with putting ads inside of Gemini results yet?
In Gemini results, yes. If you go and search, I think you will find that they, for example, if you wanted to buy something, a product, and you do the product research, it will send you links with the recommendation of what to buy or where you can find it, which in turn turns into a pay-per-click link, and it drives you to a very specific retailer or 3 or 4 of them. It doesn't do that with kind of that obnoxious sales front. It does it in a way that you basically kind of go with the flow, if you will, and you're saying, hey, it looked at 3 different places. All I have to do is click and go to it and make sure that that link works to an Amazon product, for example. I do that almost every day. And it makes it easier and much more efficient. And most of the time, the information is accurate. Some of the time, which is on the retailers, they don't really update their pricing and their models or inventory in a way that kind of makes it bulletproof, if you will. But that is the future. That is happening now. And that's why Google's going to stay. The other folks are trying to get to that model, but if you don't have the audience to begin with, it's like you can't have a streaming service that starts with 10 people and expect it to go to, hundreds of millions of people around the world using like Netflix, for example.
That makes sense. And to be clear, you're talking about the generative results that appear when you Google something. You're getting first, and I've noticed a switch up. Typically, when you ask a question, you're first getting a couple paragraphs of AI generated results, instructions that may link to a recipe or may link to something else, but it's all AI first, then it's sponsored, then it's organic. So like, if you're just even counting on organic and normal search and normal SEO, you're already, essentially page 2 versus being able.
Well, I would say you're dead, pretty much, if you rely on SEO, because SEO means you're going to the library and you're asking the librarian to take your book and put it in a visible place. The librarian at the library just got 1,000 books from different publishers, and she's alphabetizing it or putting it in a position where all the books will be in the right order. But the right order is not what marketing and advertising is about. The right order is to make your product number 1. So how do you do that? Paid advertising, and with generative AI and introducing the content creation also by the marketers, by the companies that are the clients, if you will, of Google. They're learning how to create content that makes it sticky and has authority. And that basically is what's feeding into that engine.
Very interesting. Very interesting. This has been a fascinating discussion. I know people listening or watching are going to have questions. They're going to be curious. It's, worth a search, like you said. Start playing with Chat if you haven't already, or Gemini, or some of these different models. Gal, if people are interested, they want to, talk to you, hire your organization, they want to pick up the book, your brand new book, Beating Goliath with AI. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to get a hold of me is either visit our website, borensteingroup.com, or with the www if you prefer. which is not needed anymore by the secure certificates. But other than that, look me up on LinkedIn. Just type my name in and invite me to connect, and I'll be happy to assist any one that wants to learn more about how to use AI in marketing, because it is a new field. There's a lot of questions that people think that are dumb questions, but they really aren't, because imagination is more important than knowledge, as Einstein said. So really, that's really how I see it. And if you want to buy any of the books that I wrote, with the latest being Beating Goliath with AI, which is for small companies, you can go to Amazon.com and it's there.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an engaging conversation, and I definitely think has inspired me to think a bit more about how we're implementing AI. So thank you so much for this conversation today. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. And the questions that you asked, I think, are relevant to many audiences, but specifically, if you start with the proposition of saying, we know what we don't know, you can learn something. If you think you know everything, or you accept any package that comes from an AI agent integration company, you're likely to fail.
That's a good word. Awesome. Well, Gal, thank you so much again for being here today. Everyone will have to go check out your books. We'll make sure that we have links to everything in the descriptions. And we'll stay in touch. This was awesome. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
If you own a wedding or event venue and you're considering selling, exploring different venue management options, or maybe even you're just ready for a change in business, I want to talk with you. My name is Jonathan, and for the past 8 years, my company, Common Sense Events, has managed venues across the country. We've executed over 6,000 weddings and booked over 8 figures in revenue for the venue owners who we partner with. And we have experience managing properties in California, North Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Connecticut, and Alabama. And right now, we're actually looking to partner with a handful of additional venues for 2026. We're interested in buying, partnering, full service venue management options. It really depends on what's the best fit for you and your property, as well as the value that our company is able to add. If this sounds interesting, or you simply just want to talk through your property and the business moves that you're considering for the next couple of years, click the link and schedule a short Zoom call with me. Everything's completely confidential, and I'm happy to sign an NDA before we talk. I've been in this industry for a while. I understand how sensitive these conversations are, especially when you've got couples on the books, an existing team that you really care about, as well as a reputation to protect. If you're interested in exploring those options, let's have a conversation. Click the link, and I look forward to seeing you soon.